It's the start of the 2025 football season for West Virginia football with the release of the 2025 schedule. I'm Carson Fox for you for Fox on West Virginia Mountaineers Sports. And, oh man, always an exciting time of the year in February when you can talk about what's going to happen, 7 months further ahead? But to start this video off, and I'm going to kind of break everything down for you here as we take a look at this schedule. I'm going to be maybe the most negative Nancy of anybody that you listen to if you listen to multiple WVU shows about this schedule, because I'm going to say it, I think outside of one game in particular, and we all know what game that is, I think this is the most unappealing schedule in the history of West Virginia football. That's right, you heard it here first. I didn't want to say so far as disgusting. I didn't want to say it so far as I hate this, because we got a lot of, negative stuff going on in the world and a whole bunch of different other places. So I don't want to be, another storm cloud on what is supposed to be fun and exciting and my favorite thing to talk about in West Virginia football. But this is the most unappealing schedule if you realistically take a step back and consider these opponents that West Virginia is playing, especially in the Big 12 Conference. Go on your Google Maps and type in the locations of some of these schools that West Virginia is playing. And when I did so, I found that the combined distance of the Big 12 Conference opponents that West Virginia is playing this year to Morgantown, West Virginia, combined, we are talking about 13,250 miles, people. What in the world does West Virginia have in any semblance of the connection with Salt Lake City, Utah, and the Utah Utes? Other than now its previously fired head coach in one game that miraculously came down to a Hail Mary reception for the opposing team, what does West Virginia have in common with Houston? How about Lubbock, Texas? Tempe, Arizona, a place I love, don't get me wrong. What in the world is this schedule? Adding another reason to the million reasons why you fire Neil Brown is, how would you sell tickets coming off this past year's success, or lack thereof, at a 6-7 overall record, with this schedule to sell? Now, you have the pit game. You have the backyard brawl in your backyard, at home. So you're going to be able to sell season tickets on that alone. The excitement from the faction of the fan base who was unequivocally supportive of Rich Rodriguez coming back and being the new head coach of the program. So you have that passionate of that portion of the fan base right there who are going to want to buy tickets. But I'm sorry, 5 of these 6 opponents, I truly have no feeling for. It's not that I even dislike them. I have no feeling for them. And this, unfortunately, is the consequence of West Virginia being in this new Big 12 conference, is that it's playing these opponents that and this is what no one wants to say. No one wants to say out loud. Nobody wants to be the bad guy. So I'll be the one to say it. I'm sorry, and I thank goodness, in some respect that Rich Rodriguez was the hire to ignite that fan base, but you're not getting back to this level, at least on paper. Again, winning breeds success. And again, with the native son back for the second era, you're going to have, but this is not what people, want to, or these Big 12 opponents that we have no connection to. Absolutely none. Now, are there some intriguing matchups because of how, successful, successful in the past over the last decade and a half Utah has been? That's a, pretty quality team, yes. Colorado, coming off the success that it had this past season with the Sanders boys and Travis Hunter with Deion Sanders as the head coach. Yes, but still, that is not Virginia Tech. That is not Syracuse. That is not Louisville. That are not the old Big East, now ACC opponents. So, if you want me to go out there and say it, is yes, that playing the kind of schedule that West Virginia would have in the ACC conference, Pitt included, would be better. Truly, it would be better. I mean, I think, like, depending upon the way the draw goes, with the way, if Miami was on the schedule, if Florida State, Clemson were on the schedule, the quality of opponent may be different, up or down, give or take who they're playing. But I get no satisfaction here on February 4th thinking about, man, I'm excited to go see Colorado, or I'm going to see TCU. I'm excited to see Pitt. Absolutely. After the retribution West Virginia needs to get after that debacle that I suffered through this past September at Acrisure Stadium, absolutely. We need a better game than we had 2 seasons ago. Thankful West Virginia won, but that was as ugly of a rock fight, I feel like, as I've seen in a very long time. And there were quite a few rock fights during the Neil Brown era. But ultimately, at a 30,000-foot view of this schedule and looking at it, I hate it. I really do. I hate it. So if you feel differently, if you're exhilarated, and okay, so I'll flip it on its head, and I'll give you the reasons why, I think that you can look at this from a glass half full approach or more, and, get yourself juiced in some sort of a way. So I can at least bring that to you. Just at least know deep down authentically that I don't like this whatsoever, other than Pitt. Having the Panthers on the schedule. I want to play Maryland. I want to play Louisville. I want to play Virginia Tech, Penn State. Like, that is where I, as a fan, and I bet you would agree with me, that I'm sorry, I know it makes for a harder schedule, but that is who rates well on TV. That is who you sell tickets for. You get a packed stadium. You have crazy electric atmospheres like you had for the week 1 Penn State game in the tailgating section and everything. You get national TV exposure. You have the Pat McAfee show come out to it and support, or consideration for College Game Day or Big Noon Kickoff or stuff like that. It's never going to be West Virginia, Kansas. Like, to use the old, Mean Girls line, you're never going to make fetch happen, and the Big 12 is this Frankenstein conference of the old Pac-10, the old Big 12 or Big 8, and then these eastern outposts in West Virginia and Cincinnati who have very limited history whatsoever, and UCF, who's this you think is like a new age, new money power. So because we're stuck in this scenario as West Virginia fans, that's just the way that I feel. And I would love to know your comments now 8 minutes in, if you feel the same way. If you're thankful, though, to at least have the backyard brawl on the schedule. And that is why it's so pivotal to me to keep as many of the old rivals on West Virginia's schedule as humanly possible. I don't care that West Virginia has to play 11 Power 5 conference opponents. Shane Lyons complained about, Ren Baker's complained about, that Neil Brown complained about, even was talked about by Rich Rodriguez and the 3 Guys Before the Game podcast last week. That is what we fans get excited for, get exhilarated for. That's what we want to see. We want to see those old rivalries. And if the powers that be, the forces out there, in college football and the TV networks and the multi-billions of dollars are out there, aren't going to make that happen because of conference realignment, it is my God-given right as an American and as a West Virginia fan to be able to come on here and complain about it, because this is gross. Now that I got that off my chest. RMU, Pittsburgh-based program. They are FCS. Is that what we're still calling it in today's world? So, going to be a home opener. West Virginia hasn't lost in how many years? It's throughout the Neil Brown era. I think like 20 some years that West Virginia has not lost to an FCS opponent. So, always the home opener. Doesn't know who, doesn't care who West Virginia plays. Going to sell out well. Are they going to stay, much past into halftime? No. because hopefully at that point in time, West Virginia's up by multiple scores, going to be able to coast. But that is going to make for an exciting time. Again, Rich Rodriguez's homecoming, his first game as head coach of the Mountaineers in his second era. Probably have good weather. That will be electric for all of the reasons that aren't being on the field. The next week, they go to the Ohio Bobcats, who were a decent program in the MAC and have been a decent program for several years now, kind of fluctuate, making some of those lower tier bowls, but having to go on the road. This is what you saw some complaints about when the schedule was being released. You can thank Shane Lyons for scheduling a home and home. You can probably, as a Power 5 program, or now Power 4, schedule someone else in that spot with hindsight as a home and home, not a home and away contest, but instead had that as an away series. So Mountaineer fans, I feel like this is almost in a way of like playing Marshall. So West Virginia fans going to have to travel to a smaller stadium. Granted, still, especially if you live in the central and southern parts of the state, going to make for a decently easy drive for you. And West Virginia will be able to take that over and wholeheartedly, unless you always say from week 1 to week 2, that's where a lot of the rubber meets the road, where you're trying to put in more development and things start to really gel that didn't happen in the offseason. But I like that West Virginia, from one standpoint, has two relatively similar cupcakes in a way. You step up in competition, similar like what happened, I feel like, with the basketball team earlier this fall. So they'll kick it off with RMU, win by multiple scores. Ohio go on the road. That shouldn't be closer than I'm thinking 10 at least, and I'm being generous here. So West Virginia should win that game. So you're 2-0. Hopefully, and I'm not trying to make any sort of predictions here. I'm just speaking this as my relative thoughts about this schedule. So then you come into the home contest against Pitt, backyard brawl, bring Pat Narduzzi once again back down into Morgantown. That will be electric. West Virginia's first game, I think it's just, how do the stars align like this that Pitt is playing West Virginia on 9/13? In Rich Rod's first game back in his second era as head coach. Just wild that that's going to happen. That will be, if Pitt doesn't lay an egg on its face, have another Pat McAfee show down there, maybe College Game Days down there, have to see how the rest of the college football schedule lays out, but that one should be absolutely electric. So then looking at it and the rest of totality, 5 Big 12 games on the road, 4 home games. You do have, what is that, like 5 games, 6 there before the first week of October. So no, I did like the way that the bye weeks were scheduled this past year for West Virginia football. I thought that was really well timed before West Virginia went into that home stretch, or that October stretch of 5 actually, if you count Kansas as the last weekend in September. But I do like that West Virginia, having 2 home games, you would figure they were going to go onto the road for their first Big 12 contest. You'll be able to open up Kansas's newly renovated stadium, the first Big 12 game for them in that stadium. Kansas is, and this is where another thing, kind of give a 30,000-foot view of this schedule, is I'm kind of like putting a pause after trying to do this now for the last 2 seasons of predicting on paper in February, like, these should be wins. This is the favorable part of the schedule where the schedule starts to ease up or lightens up, because we just don't know. I mean, Arizona State was picked as the 16th team out of 16 teams in the Big 12 media poll to start out the season, and they end up winning the conference. So to say on paper that we know anything, I feel like, about any of these schools, just the margin for victory and loss, as I've said countless times, is so small within one score within this conference. And everybody now, with Texas and Oklahoma being out of the conference, similar in ballpark of athletic department revenue. I would say Kansas basketball being the one exception, a true blue blood in college basketball. But you get what I'm saying. Athletic department revenue, commitment to revenue sharing, NIL support. Like, it's not like we're comparing the SEC here or even some of those elite programs in the Big Ten. That the Big 12 has so much parity, so much. I feel like like-minded, similar ideologically programs, and also in terms of support is rabid in some sectors. That it does make for a very competitive conference. So Kansas going to be a tough out on the road. We know that game went to overtime this past season, even with it turned like Garrett Green and the West Virginia offense turned it on just in the nick of time, down multiple scores in the fourth quarter, and came back to win it. Kansas is replacing a ton on offense at the skill position players, namely Devin Neal around. His name completely escapes me, the quarterback. But so Kansas, I like that as a Big 12 opener, even on the road. I think that's a place that West Virginia could go in there and win. Utah at home, good weather, going to be different for the Utes. I think that's the first ever matchup between the two programs there at the end of September. Think that's still too early that West Virginia will have homecoming for that one. I'm thinking the next home contest against TCU, October 25th, will be the homecoming game. So the home Big 12 opener against a Utah-led program that was like high and mighty coming in as the first-year program, thinking they were going to waltz right in, win the conference, and this was going to be theirs for the taking. I'll be curious to see. I mean, if there hasn't been already news already, here is February 4th that Kyle Whittingham will stay as the head coach of the program, just moving on from Cam Rising. That offense, if you watch some of Utah's game, was pitiful last season. So they have much to do on that defensive end of the field, and they're going to have to continue to bring their physicality in the Big 12 defensively. So wake-up call for them. We'll see if that shakes them up, having to come to Morgantown. I like that contest for West Virginia, at least on paper right now. The one that starts to surprise me, and man, you only have 6 days rest in between this, right before a bye, a Friday night game at BYU. And if you've watched any of those at BYU Friday night games, I don't know what those students are on, because we know they don't drink. So whatever's in their milk and cookies and lemonade out there in Provo, that they just go insane. Lavelle Edwards Stadium is bigger than Milan Puskar Stadium. And those people just get up for those Friday night games. So that just seems like walking into a snake pit. That is a trap waiting to be happen. BYU had some every program no one had more turnover than West Virginia, honestly, with the transfer portal and the firing of Neil Brown and some mass exodus of players out of the program. But BYU bringing back Jake Retzloff at quarterback. Had an awesome 2024 campaign. I would think that they will be considered on paper come media day in July as one of the top 4 teams coming into this season, given that they probably should have been or had the chops to participate in the college football playoff. I think had they not lost that road matchup at Arizona State in the regular season, BYU would have gotten another shot in the Big 12 championship game. That BYU, instead of ASU, could have been that team representing the conference in just their second year in the Big 12. So, I'm a little bit frightened about that. Friday night, October 3rd, again, 6 games in 6 weeks before a bye. Remember, out of a bye week, I think it was in the 2023 season, then West Virginia went on the road against UCF in Orlando. This is the 3rd year in a row now that West Virginia's had the Golden Knights. I think that the Big 12 is trying, again, to make something that's not going to ever manifest happen and try and make West Virginia and UCF these like Eastern time zone rivals. The way that they have them scheduled now for 3 seasons in a row, now 2 out of 3, 2 on the road. Had that game in 2023. I think the bounce house is overrated. People who have been there, um, hopefully you have good weather there in October. I can think of worse places to play. UCF having to do a total rebuild, with Gus Malzahn leaving as the head coach. So like where West Virginia's chances are on paper. Again, 7-8 months out now. Looking at that Golden Knights contest there in mid-October, West Virginia's I think is undefeated as a program against UCF in their 4 contests against the Knights. So have no qualms with their going on the road, and look forward to that matchup, in fact. So then here we go. If we have homecoming against TCU on October 25th, just another chapter in the rivalry. If there is one or two, I feel like with TCU and maybe Baylor in this conference, always weird stuff happens between West Virginia and TCU in their games. So go back to 2014 at home. Go to 2017 on the road in Fort Worth. So welcome back the Horned Frogs, having not played them this past season. Josh Hoover will be returning. I know Jack Beck lit up the Senior Bowl this past weekend. So TCU is a team that kind of bounced back from a down 2023 year after going to the national championship game in 2022. Bounced back with 8 or 9 wins this past season. TCU, I think, right with BYU, same with Arizona State, are going to come in with a lot of media publicity this offseason. Is a team that can, with Texas Tech also, with what they've done in the transfer portal, as maybe your top 4 teams coming in the preseason poll that West Virginia now has on its schedule. So glad to have that one at home. There in mid-October, and if it's homecoming, West Virginia does do a pretty good job, I feel like, of bringing out the old grads to Milan Puskar Stadium. And if at this point in time, West Virginia, we're talking about maybe a 5-1, 4-2 team, then I think that will have a pretty good attendance to it and exciting. On the road at Houston. Houston didn't make a bowl game, first year of the Willie Fritz era. Had that one upset, I think it was it BYU or not Arizona State? Was it Colorado? I can't remember. I feel like I'm blanking on this whole 2024 college football season. But Houston kind of trying to find its footing, still haven't figured things out, still should be considered, I feel like, as a bottom dweller in this conference, down there with Cincinnati. And now, like, Arizona taking a major step back after losing Jed Fish as head coach. So love to see West Virginia go on the road, win that rematch after what happened 2 seasons ago against Dana Holgerson in that Hail Mary play. So then coming back, so West Virginia still continues after its bye week of week 7, so what would traditionally be like October 11th. West Virginia plays then that next stretch of 5 consecutive games, second to last home game, November 8th against Colorado. Doesn't seem like Deion Sanders is leaving for the NFL. Florida State's not firing Mike Norvell, so he's not going there. There's no other SEC job, so for the time being, Deion Sanders is there in Colorado, and this is where really the rubber meets the road for this Colorado program. Is you don't have Shedeur Sanders, arguably the number 1 best quarterback on the board for the 2025 NFL draft. So you don't have him to rely on to play Superman for you out there, save you every which way, no run game. You don't have now Travis Hunter, winner of the Heisman Trophy, on both sides of the field, so he locks down 2 positions, 1 defensively, 1 offensively, and everything that he could do for you in the special teams game as well. So this is where now in year 3 has his recruiting out of high school, in the transfer portal. Can he put it all together, and then can he put together a season where Colorado wins 8 games or more? I'm betting against it. I'm just betting against it because programs like Colorado regress to the mean of what they've always been when you don't have a transcendent player there. Now, I know they have a 5-star true freshman quarterback, but so did Nebraska with Dylan Raiola this past season, And I would argue that Nebraska has comparable or better talent across at other positions, offensively and defensively, as Colorado did. In the first year of comparing first year Shedeur Sanders versus the first year of Raiola. So go ahead. I'll see that at Mountaineer Field November 8th. Can Dion and co come into Milan Puskar Stadium and upset the Mountaineers? What I would think would be an upset. Or two comparable teams. We'll see where both of those programs are by mid-November, when things should really start to open up to find out who's going to be playing for a Big 12 championship. So then November 15th, just previewing this, letting you know, I very well may be attending this game out in Tempe. My younger brother is an Arizona State grad, have been there multiple times. I've seen the stadium from the outside, so my family and I are probably going to pick up, and we might be going to that game. So if that is the case, I'll be creating some content while I'm out there, telling you a little bit more about the ASU experience, my time, what they're like. So just kind of forewarning you, 9 months in advance. And so Arizona State was a team that I was actually excited for this prospect and possibility whenever they joined the conference. But I know I'm just one example, and kind of a rare case example here that I'm excited to see ASU. I'm sure if you're watching this, you're like, who cares about Arizona State? Why would I want to have them in the conference? But awesome town, Tempe, awesome campus. Really excited to see what they're like. And they are the returning Big 12 champions. Should have beat Texas in that college football playoff matchup. Shouldn't have given up a touchdown on 4th and 15. That couldn't happen. So no Cam Scatterbo. Do return Sam Levitt. Do return, Talon, the wide receiver. I know he didn't make that contest in the college football playoff, but have a near 1,000-yard receiver. Really like Kenny Dillingham as a coach. So if there was one other program, well, as long as Oklahoma State still has Mike Gundy, I feel like that's a program that I can root for when they're not playing West Virginia. I don't have any animosity against Oklahoma State, and I don't against Arizona State. So looking forward to that matchup on the road. So that makes for a very interesting late November, I would say. The Colorado on the road at UCF or ASU. Then West Virginia gets a bye week. So I think probably happy from the terms of this is right before, I think, Thanksgiving. So if students leave for Thanksgiving break, then I think my schedule is right on that. There's always these complaints right around Thanksgiving break that West Virginia doesn't sell enough tickets, they don't get the student support, all this, yada, yada, yada. But if West Virginia is playing for a Big 12 championship, or they're bringing in and Texas Tech is maybe an undefeated team or number one team in the Big 12 standings, I don't care what weekend it is there at end of November, that will get people into the stands. Now, if the weather's crap, if West Virginia is, I don't know, at this point in time, 7-4, or 6-5, and they're playing Texas Tech, and Texas Tech is either rolling. People are not going to want to put themselves through what Texas Tech put West Virginia through, even on the road this past fall. That was unacceptable. For the few Mountaineers who have stayed with this program, who are a part of that game, part of that experience and loss, I'm sure that they have a sour taste in their mouths. So they're circling that contest on the schedule, wanting to get back to those Red Raiders and punish them for the way things went down. So in totality, taking a step back, I think there is a decent balance between some of the teams that right now on paper look to be, either your what if you want to call them your conference contenders, or will be highly rated in the Big 12 preseason poll. So I'm looking at you, BYU. I'm looking at you, Arizona State, Texas Tech, TCU. So yeah, late October into November, I see 4 of those 7 contests are going to be really tough. So I like West Virginia's chances early. And I like that West Virginia has 5 contests before the start of October. So you have fair, and 3 of those 5 games are at home. So you have favorable chances at weather. It can be really sporadic. Depending upon if you get either hit with an early fall hurricane, or you get really nice weather like we've had at the Backyard Brawl in 2023. And I would still rather it be somewhere in the 80s than I would it being into the 30s. Let me put it that way. I just don't like experiencing that. So that's it in totality. I'm not going to make a prediction as of right now. I just don't think that necessarily makes sense to do so. Just think it's going to be tough sledding every single week, as it all has been for so long with this program. Got a lot of moving parts, a lot of things, but I like how it shakes out at the beginning for West Virginia to figure those out, kind of culminating that acclimation period there with the Backyard Brawl, then getting into the thick of it of the Big 12 schedule with having to go like 2 of the 3 on the road. But I'd rather it start out with Kansas than start out with, say, BYU or Arizona State. Might maybe have switched UCF or Houston there, like, to be okay. I feel like I'm playing like Hollywood Squares with moving these teams around in this graphic here, but ultimately, I'm not at all like I'm still trying to digest this, still trying to power my way through it. I feel like this is just like a super well done burnt steak that I'm just trying to power through because I'm so hungry for a winning season, a conference championship contending one. And as we know more about this roster developing over the course of the next several months, that maybe just maybe, come summertime, I'm juiced, I'm jived, I'm like, let's go, let's do this kind of thing. But right now, just looking at it, it's like blah. So, love to know your thoughts, good, bad, or indifferent. Leave them here on YouTube. If you've liked this video, please like it so more Mountaineer fans can see it across YouTube. Love to have you as a subscriber across my channel. Going to be talking about the upcoming West Virginia baseball season here in the next week or so before they start off the 2025 campaign. More West Virginia basketball. Big news on the basketball front happened today with Tucker DeVries being shut down for the rest of the season, going to be trying to apply for a medical red shirt. So how does that affect not only the prospects of the rest of this season, but also looking ahead already to next season? So got a lot to talk about. It's never a dull moment in the world of West Virginia sports, and I love bringing it to you. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I do this each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it. Hail West Virginia. Let's go spot the ball.